Roughly 15 years ago, Chevrolet introduced a brand new large 3-row crossover SUV to their lineup called the Traverse. Now the Traverse was slightly unique in this space because even though it was kind of late to the party, this vehicle was a lot bigger than its main rivals, giving it minivan levels of practicality and interior space. Now fast forward of course to today, and it looks like Chevy is finally ready to introduce an all-new 3rd generation model, complete with all-new sheet metal on the outside that borrows a lot of cues from its bigger brother, the Tahoe, a brand new turbocharged engine under the hood, and a brand new infotainment system that finally gives the Traverse class-leading levels of technology. So as you can see this week, Chevy has loaned us this 2024 Traverse Z71, their off-road oriented model painted in this beautiful color called Stardust Metallic. And the big question I want to answer for those of you who are looking for a big family SUV and you want something with a little bit more brawnier looks with best-in-class interior space, how does the brand new 2024 Traverse stack up? Stay tuned to find out. So before we start talking about the brand new sheet metal for the all-new 3rd generation Traverse, let me go ahead and pop the hood and show you guys what's powering this thing. Now, unlike the previous generation where Chevy offered a choice of 2 different engines, they've simplified this car for this generation. It now is only offered with a new 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. Now this engine is new to the Chevrolet family, but it also is a derived version, a slightly smaller version of the 2.7-liter turbo 4-cylinder from the Chevrolet Colorado or GMC Canyon. Here in the Traverse, this 2.5-liter direct injection 4-cylinder makes 328 horsepower and 326 pound-feet of torque. That's actually among the best power figures for a base engine in its class, and it also represents about a 20 horsepower increase from the old naturally aspirated V6 and about 60 more pound-feet of torque compared to that old V6. Again, it all goes out through an 8-speed automatic transmission. It's a new transmission, although it's technically the old 9-speed with a gear lopped off, of course, for better drivability to keep the engine in the meat of its power band. You could take your pick between either front-wheel drive or for $2,000 extra add the company's all-wheel drive system. This Z71 that I'm showing you comes standard with all-wheel drive and of course an upgraded twin clutch rear differential to appropriate the power and give this thing a little bit better torque vectoring for off-road capability. Fuel economy for this new engine is rated at 19 in the city, 24 on the highway, around 21 combined. It's around a 1 mpg improvement over the old V6. The all-wheel drive version has a larger 21.7 gallon fuel tank, about 2 gallons larger than the front-wheel drive version. And with that, fuel economy and the fuel tank capacity, you should be looking at around 450 miles of range on regular gas. Now, Chevy doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time. We'll test it out when we get out on the road. It has a top speed, I would estimate around 130-ish miles an hour. This vehicle can still tow a maximum of 5,000 pounds, so that hasn't changed compared to the old model with its V6. And as this car sits, it weighs in at just over 4,700 pounds. But let's go ahead and close up this hood here and talk about the exterior styling. Now, when I first saw this vehicle in photos last year, I was really impressed because first of all, I actually confused it with a Tahoe, which is a very good thing. The previous generations of Traverses have always, to me, just looked like a minivan, but you can see this car adopts the latest Chevy design language very well. First of all, this color is called Stardust Metallic. I actually really love this color. It's kind of like a purplish, grayish, pinkish, metallic-y fleck color, which is actually a no-charge option. It really works well with the Z71's unique front fascia. You can see you have the big signature Chevy bow tie grille with the gloss black, the Z71 badge. I also love the black bow tie. You can see all Traverses come standard with the new LED headlights with a divorced look to them, where you have the turn signal and daytime running light up here. Down here you can see you have your LED low and high beam. Surprisingly, no fog lights on the vehicle, but you can see with the Z71 you have these beefy red tow hooks. You actually have a skid plate underneath there when you want to go off-roading. And then the front fascia is unique, of course, to give this vehicle a better approach angle, and the vehicle's suspension is also unique, lifting it by about 1.2 inches, giving us just under 8 inches of ground clearance, which is good, but it's not class leading. I was expecting this car to have more like 9 inches of ground clearance, especially considering it's got a Z71 off-road package. Now, moving around the side profile, this vehicle is still riding on the same C1 architecture that was introduced in the 2nd generation. However, it's been heavily modified, but its dimensions are roughly the same. This is still among the biggest vehicles in its class at 204.7 inches long. The Z71 is technically 0.2 inches longer than the other trims because of the unique front and rear bumpers. Its wheelbase is 121 inches long. It's around an inch wider than the previous generation, however. but overall length stays roughly the same. It's around 79.6 inches wide as well. You can see on the Z71, you get these beefy 18-inch alloy wheels with a two-tone machine and gloss black appearance. You can see it even has a 6-lug design, all-wheel disc brakes. You have a all-terrain tire, a 265 by 65 R18 Goodyear Wrangler all-terrain tire. Certainly looks really nice. Of course, with the upgraded suspension. I also like how the wheel arch trims, they are unpainted, but they're not overwhelmingly cheap looking or kind of covering up the side profile of the vehicle. You can see it still spells Traverse on the side over there. You get black painted side mirrors. These are not power folding, but you do get a 360 camera included with a upgrade package that my test car has. You can also see there's a lot of black trim around the windowsills, black for the roof rails, and then my tester for 1,500 bucks has the panoramic sunroof, which is a great option if you guys want to let in a little bit more light. And then backing away from the rest of the profile, this is where, again, the Traverse just looks so much better. It's got that boxier design that sheds a lot of the stodgy minivan-like proportions of the previous generation. And then moving around to the rear, Chevy says they designed the rear end of the car to accentuate its width. With that kind of wider design for the LED taillights, you can see they also have a unique look to them, which reminds me of the Chevrolet Blazer EV, where it has a portion that kind of extends into the rear and then drops down into the bumper. It's a full LED taillight design, as you can see, with LED reverse lights in the lower bumper. All Traverse models actually come standard with the quad outlet exhaust, which I very much appreciate. A lot of brands are getting rid of actual exposed exhaust because of electrification. This car has no form of electrification, no hybrid, no upgrade engine. So it's kind of a straightforward vehicle. You can see there's badging here, Traverse all-wheel drive, Z71 badge. Again, the Z71 comes standard with the company's all-wheel drive system. Now the spoiler is a nice touch. You have a digital camera rear view mirror. There's a rear window wiper that's not hidden under the spoiler itself, but I think it actually still looks very well proportioned back here. And then all Traverse models, even the base LS, includes a power liftgate, which is a nice feature. And then of course, when this vehicle, or because this vehicle is so large, you get the biggest cargo area in its segment. So Chevy says with the third row up, you get a maximum of 23 cubic feet of space. 23 is around 3 to 5 more cubic feet versus a lot of its competitors. That number doesn't even include the additional underfloor storage space that you get in here. And it's a deep underfloor storage area, which is definitely a nice touch for hiding a few more items. You can obviously fold down the third row seat here if you'd like, which you can see here. If you want to fold this down, I'm surprised actually it doesn't actually fold down the head restraint. The head restraints, once they kind of move out of position, not sure why they're not folding down on this particular model here, but Chevy says when you fold down the third row, it expands the cargo to around 56 cubic feet. You can get a power folding third row, but that's only on the top of the line RS trim, which I would probably recommend if you guys want that added convenience. Fold down every seat, however, and Chevy says the max cargo is just under 98 cubic feet of space, which pretty much matches the Toyota Grand Highlander, although it is, I believe, around a cubic feet more. So again, if you want the biggest amount of cargo space in the segment, you better put this vehicle at the top of your list. So obviously Chevrolet did a really great job with the exterior design of the new Traverse, but the interior is really where families are going to be spending all their time. Before we hop inside, however, let me show you guys the key fob. You can see this is the current GM Intelligent Access key. It's got the black Chevy bow tie on it. It's a nice size. It has your usual buttons here for lock, unlock, remote start, open up the lift gate, and then a panic feature. This key fob, again, is what you're going to find on a lot of GM vehicles. Now, as I approach the door handle, you can see it's a traditional door handle. This vehicle does offer a walkaway auto lock function. So if you have it turned on, if I have the key fob on me, I shut the door, it'll beep once and then lock the doors for you. No power folding mirrors, which is interesting. But again, I very much appreciate the traditional door handles here instead of using like a digital latch system. Now, opening up the door and checking out the interior, you can see my test car, the Stardust metallic exterior is complemented pretty nicely by the black Evo Tex upgraded leatherette interior. So this is an extra $1,000 to get the leatherette here, as you can see. These seats are also heated, but ventilation is not available on the Z71. You have to go to the RS trim. You do have an 8-way power driver's seat, but no memory seat function. That's again included on the RS trim, so that's another reason to step it up to the top trim level. You can't get that on the Z71 package. You also can't get a light interior on the top trims. Only the LT offers a gray and black two-tone combination. So I do think that Chevy needs to expand the color palettes, especially for the interior. The door panel, you can see, has a soft touch injection molded plastic, this really interesting red glossy plastic trim, aluminum accented door handle, padded leather over here, one touch up or down for all four, only one touch up for the driver's side. And then down here you can see it's hard touch plastic. You have some storage there, and then you have the upgraded Bose stereo, which sounds decent if you guys are an audiophile. I don't love the GM bong, as you can hear, but once you step inside, it has that nice, easy SUV step-in height. And then as I shut the door also has a nice solid sounding thunk. Remember, this is built off of the same C1 architecture as its previous generation. It's just been heavily modified. Now, starting the vehicle up, the start-stop button is right here where you'd expect it to be. And this is not a hybrid or a mild hybrid, so it has a traditional starter noise. What you heard is the new 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, which the 4-cylinder definitely doesn't have the same sweet snarls that the V6 had, but what you do have is more horsepower and more torque with better fuel efficiency. So I can see why they went to a turbocharged 4-cylinder. The other thing that GM really upgraded tremendously is the technology in this car. First of all, you can see Super Cruise is available as part of an option package on this trim and the LT trim, just not on the LS. It's standard on the RS trim. It also is their latest version of Super Cruise, where it'll initiate lane changes for you, do them for you as well. And it works really nicely. You have a standard 11-inch display behind the steering wheel as part of your instrument display. You can also kind of customize this look by pushing this little button here. You can put the full Google Maps there. You can also put Apple Maps there, which is really nice. You can put your driver assistance features, kind of like a less busy mode, obviously, and then this is the standard mode with the traditional dial for the tachometer. And then over here you can see there's a massive 17.7-inch touchscreen. Now this display is literally more than twice the size of the previous generation. The old Traverse topped out at 8 inches. This again is the biggest display that you're going to find as standard in the segment. Every other brand in this vehicle segment has roughly a 12.3-inch display, but you can see GM went all out with a 17.7-inch display. It runs off of their latest Google infotainment software. It's based off of Android Automotive. It has the Google Assistant, so you can give it voice commands, of course, and unlike the Chevrolet Blazer EV, which I just recently had that has this same screen, this actually has wireless phone integration with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. As you can see, when you activate the CarPlay, my phone is connected while I'm filming here, and it just takes up the entire screen, which I appreciate. It does have like a cutoff here, but it goes off to this edge right here. So this looks freaking fantastic. I really wish the Blazer EV had this feature. Obviously they can do it, and I think with enough feedback from customers, they're gonna have enough pushback to where GM will probably eventually offer the wireless phone integration, which I think is freaking fantastic looking in this car. You can see, going back to the regular system, like I said earlier, this car does have embedded GPS function in the car, where it basically has Google Maps built in, obviously, which is what you kind of expect when you're looking at the latest and greatest in terms of technology. You can also, like I said, put it back over here into the actual screen. Going back to this system here, you can see it has your usual sources. It's really easy to navigate. It's also quick and snappy and easy to use. You can also access your climate functions here. If you are looking for your trip computer, that's going to be located here. Obviously, to go into the screen from here, that's where you reset it, as opposed to looking over here. So overall, this is pretty easy to use. A couple of redundant controls from typically you'll find on the stock have been moved to the actual screen. You can see these are like a shortcut area where this area doesn't change the way it looks, but you can access your headlight controls over here. Most of you will just leave it on automatic. Access the lane keep assist. You can also pull that up and pull up more controls here if you need to. So again, once you kind of get used to it and just set it, you won't really touch those controls. Most people, again, will kind of just leave it in an automatic setting. If I tap this little camera button here, you can see the full 360 camera is also included on this trim. You can also go to a side view, a top-down view, or the standard view, obviously. It also includes trajectory and distance markers, as you expect, rear cross traffic alert, parking sensors, all the good stuff that you expect in today's modern vehicles. So I think Chevy did a pretty good job, which, by the way, the shifter, as you can see, has been repositioned from here to over here. So to access reverse, you actually have to pull toward you and then go up to go to reverse, pull toward you again to go to neutral and hold it, and then kick down to go to drive. And then there's also paddles here, but the paddles actually don't control the gears. They actually control when you're in the low range, or the low gearing there, to basically control the revs for this vehicle, but it doesn't actually control the gears, which is what I've been told by General Motors. Now, in terms of the interior materials, you can see there is a soft touch injection molded plastic here on this upper portion. which is nice. You have some more aluminum trim, more of that red dotted gloss plastic from the doors carried over onto the dashboard here, which definitely makes it look a little bit nice. There is a lot of glossy piano black, which I don't love. This is going to show scratches and fingerprints quite annoyingly. You have tri-zone automatic climate control. I appreciate the actual knobs here to control the climate. You also have a knob here to control your volume controls. The wheel itself has a manual tilt and telescoping function. It offers a good amount of adjustability and range. The wheel itself is also a heated steering wheel. But again, if you're looking for ventilated seats, you have to step it up to the RS trim. Over here, you can see there is no head-up display. I believe that's something that they're going to offer on the Acadia version of this car. And then over here, you can see your drive mode selector is located over here. You can see if I start switching that drive mode, you can change between a normal, a sport, an off-road mode, which is unique to the Z71, a terrain mode. I'm sorry, the terrain mode is unique to the Z71 along with your tow haul mode. Most of you will just drive the vehicle in its normal function. There's also a separate button here to engage the all-wheel drive system. Your auto start, stop, defeat button is obviously here. And then the horn, it's pretty much what you expect. It sounds appropriately, sized given the proportions of this vehicle. Now down here, you can see you have a wireless phone charging pad. There's some stitching over here where it's slightly padded, a little bit more storage down here underneath the center console area, which is nice. A nice little storage area here. We can close that up again to hide a few things. My wallet fits in there perfectly. This is a nice padded center console. If I open that up, you can see it's got 2 levels of storage. The lower level is a lot deeper. It's got a pretty good amount of storage, which I very much appreciate. The seats are, in my opinion, they're comfortable and supportive. They don't really hold you in place, but they look fine. I just want Chevy to offer ventilated seats on this trim and offer a lighter interior color, which I think it should have. Of course, at this price point, open up the glove box, you can see it's huge. It's damped, but not lined with felt. It's a bin style. So overall storage space in this vehicle is among the best in the segment. It's what you expect in a vehicle like this. You also have a digital camera, rear view mirror, which I appreciate. It's included with the Super Cruise package. There's a woven material for the headliner. Not much in terms of ambient lighting in here, but if you need more lighting, you better select this panoramic sunroof, which is new this year because the old one had it split up with a one panel here and another panel here. Now it's just one continuous piece of glass. It also opens up to vent air, which I also really like. Again, this is great for letting in more light. This is a $1,500 upcharge. It's standard equipment on the RS trim, so I think a lot of people should be choosing that option. But overall, the interior definitely is now class leading in terms of technology. In terms of materials and build quality, it's average. There's a good amount of space, good visibility in here. I just would like to spend a week with the GMC version of this car because it has a completely different interior layout, as this interior can feel a little bit too dark for my taste, but overall, it's certainly a nice place to spend time. Now moving into the second row, the Traverse has always excelled as a family vehicle, and that's clearly still the case for this new generation. You can see the top trims like this Z71 and RS only come with captain's chairs. If you guys want a bench, which will improve your seating capacity to 8, you need to step down to the LS or the LT trim, so kind of keep that in mind. Now in terms of the rear materials, you have the same soft touch materials from the front carried over back here. There's less of that glossy red plastic, but you do have a padded area over here, which is nice. Hard touch plastic here, still the Bose stereo system, of course, carrying over, but what this car is lacking is retractable sunshades. I don't know if the RS has that feature. I haven't had a chance to spend a week with the RS trim yet, but at this price point, this trim should also include it, especially given the options that this car has. The seats back here, you can see, are pretty comfortable and supportive. Now, in terms of the legroom space, Chevy says you have 41.5 inches of legroom, which is among the best in the segment. You can see this is where I'd have the seat to drive. I can pretty much cross my legs and get super comfortable. I can stretch out back here. There's also a flat floor. If you guys have the bench seat option, the lower trims, you'll also be able to sit 3 people across easily because this vehicle is almost 80 inches wide. You have 2 storage cubbies over here, cup holders, obviously, dual zone, your own set of climate control functions. And then you can see there's also a power outlet over here, which is a nice touch, along with 2 USB-C charging ports, a little bit of storage over here. But what this trim is lacking is heated second row seats. The RS trim, I believe, gives you that feature. Your rear seat air vents are located here on the ceiling, along with some LED lighting. The panoramic glass roof comes into the second row, which is also obviously a nice touch. You can slide these second row seats forward and back, which you're going to need to be able to give the third row passengers a little bit more legroom space. It also gives you a recline function, although I believe this is the most that it reclines the seat, which isn't all that much. If I sit back up, you can see headroom space is pretty decent for me at 5'7". So the sunroof obviously takes up a little bit of space, but it's still among the most roomy in the segment for the second row. Now hopping into the third row, obviously you can just crawl between the 2 seats if you'd like. But getting back here, most of you will probably just pull this little lever right here, and what you can see is the seat kind of tilts forward and pushes out of the way. But it also does it in a way, if you have a child seat here, you can still keep the child seat anchored but still access into the third row. You can see the third row obviously sits 3 people across because this is among the widest vehicles in the class. And then getting back here, let me go ahead and move this back. You can see when I move this back into position, it actually doesn't return all the way to its rearmost position. In this position here, you can see Chevy says there's around 32 inches of legroom. 32 is fine, although you're going to find about 1.5 inches more legroom in something like the Toyota Grand Highlander, for example, or even the Hyundai Palisade, I believe, and Kia Telluride offers a little bit more legroom in the third row. You can see with the second row seat all the way back, in this position, however, it is tight. You can see at 5'7", my knees are slammed up against this versus over here, they weren't. So you're gonna have to ask that passenger to move the seat forward slightly, which does eat into their space a little bit. I'd say that's probably around 2 inches that it ate into for the legroom space. Once you're back here, you can see you do have a USB-C charging port on this side, and on the other side, there's a little bit of cup holder storage. Hard touch plastic materials. Of course, you have a small window that allows you to see out of. I think that this could make you feel a little claustrophobic if you're back here. You do have rear seat third row air vents, which is a nice touch. There's like pretty good headspace, however, so if you're tall, you're gonna find plenty of headroom because there's like a sculpted area here where it gives you a little bit extra headroom space. But overall, you can see the third row for a vehicle this big could be better. I kind of wish that GM had focused a little bit more on giving us more third row space, but I think they did that because they wanted to give you class leading space behind the third row for cargo, but just keep that in mind that some competitors, even though they're a little smaller, offer a little bit more third row legroom space. So in this mid-size 3-row crossover family SUV segment, I have to say there are a ton of options out there, a lot of good options. So I'll admit that there have been times where I have simply just forgotten about the Chevrolet Traverse, but with this all-new third generation, with the huge increase in style, technology, and of course all the extra space this car gives you, it's hard to ignore the Traverse, especially the new version. So now that we're finally behind the wheel of this redesigned model, I have to say my first impressions are relatively positive. I mean, the V6 is gone, so now in its place we have essentially a smaller version of the 2.7 liter turbo 4. It's a 2.5 liter turbo 4 from the Chevy Colorado and GMC Canyon. It makes 328 horsepower, which is almost 20 more than the old V6 and about 60 more foot-pounds of torque than the old V6, hooked up to an 8-speed auto with the company's twin-clutch all-wheel drive system. So I have it in its sport mode setting right now. Let's go ahead and see what we can get 0 to 60 wise. There's no launch control, and brake torquing it doesn't really help, so I'll just floor it. The 8-speed auto is really smooth shifting. I like that. 7.45 seconds there. And I have to say, the 4-cylinder turbo in this car, just like the 2.7 in the Canyon in Colorado, does not have a great sound. It's a rather whiny sounding engine. Thankfully, the engine is relatively smooth. I don't feel much in terms of vibrations through the pedals and the shifter, or I'm sorry, the steering wheel and whatnot. But I do miss the sound of the old V6. That was actually a screamer of an engine. Because again, it was naturally aspirated. You had to rev that engine to actually produce the power. I will say that the 7.45 is a little bit disappointing. That number is pretty comparable to the last Grand Highlander with the 2.4 liter turbo that I tested. Remember, you're not going to buy a vehicle like this for quick 0 to 60 times. What you do feel, however, is the significant increase in torque. You don't have to really rev the engine out very much to get it to accelerate, which is a nice thing. It just doesn't have, again, a wonderful sound to it. Let's try another run here. This time it's a little bit more uphill. Shifts at around 5,500 RPM, but once that turbo kicks in, it feels good. 7.86 seconds there, so again, not class leading, obviously, but that's not the point of a vehicle like this. What you do notice, however, is just the improvement in drivability. This engine has gobs of torque everywhere. It also has a really great 8-speed auto, essentially to create this 8-speed GM kind of lopped off of gear off of their in-house developed 9-speed automatic. And it's a well-spaced gearing for the transmission that works well with the power band of this 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. So that's definitely a good thing. I think the powertrain is fine, although I really would love to see Chevrolet reintroduce a hybrid or introduce a hybrid version of this, or some kind of up-level engine, just to get that 0 to 60 time to, you know, under 7 seconds, which would be nice. The quickest cars will do it in like 5.7, 5.8 seconds. But overall, this car is really comfortable to drive. That's what I appreciate about the Traverse. It's got a really good ride quality, especially this model with the Z71 off-road package. It has an off-road tuned suspension, additional inch of ground clearance, skid plates, a twin clutch all-wheel drive system. It just glides over whatever crappy road surface you're gonna drive over. It just soaks up the bumps. It's relatively quiet. Aside from the whiny 4-cylinder when you're pushing it, it has very little road and wind noise. Even these tires, these Goodyear all-terrain tires, don't have as much, you know, tire drumming noise than I expected. The handling of this vehicle, all independent suspension. The steering is numb, very slow to react. You definitely feel the all-terrain tires sapping the road feel and the responsiveness of the handling for this car. So my recommendation, if you guys want a sportier driving Traverse, make sure you check out the RS trim with its 22-inch wheels. Put my foot down. The twin clutch all-wheel drive system can send the power more to the rear, and it's actually spinning out the front tires as it tries to shove the power side to the back axle, but it's perfectly acceptable. And it just kind of goes down the road with a level of confidence that you expect from a crossover. Lots of, you know, grip, good visibility. The seats, these are the Evo Tex leatherette seats on the Z71. Aside from this interior basically being just too dark for my taste, the seats, they kind of feel really comfortable. Not much, actually not anything in terms of bolstering. It just feels like I'm sitting on a cushy seat that you kind of expect to find in your mother-in-law's living room, for example. It's a perfectly comfortable seat. Visibility is also good. You can see out of the front, the sides really nicely. The view out of the back with a digital camera rear mirror obviously is great, but if you don't have that, you can see the third row head restraints do block your view a little bit, but you can also just fold that down to kind of get rid of that. The one thing about the Traverse that I noticed, aside from the wheel spin constantly, is this car definitely feels big. It feels much wider than its competition. It feels like I'm driving almost like a minivan per se, although it sits up higher than a minivan. You just kind of have to get used to the fact that even though, you know, there are big vehicles in this class, the Traverse is even bigger. It's the biggest car out there. It's around 3.5 inches longer than Toyota's Grand Highlander. So it's, you know, good for interior space and cargo space. This gives you the most in the class. It's not great for driving dynamics, but I'd argue that people in this segment don't necessarily care for that. But if you guys don't like or aren't comfortable driving big vehicles, this is where the Traverse's sheer size could be a problem, especially if you're trying to parallel park this thing in tight spaces. And thankfully a 360 camera is included as well, and that kind of helps with things along with the parking sensors. GM Super Cruise, their excellent Super Cruise, is finally offered on this car. It's part of an option package that my test car has for $3,200. Worth every penny if you guys constantly do longer trips. I love Super Cruise. It has the automatic lane changes. It'll change lanes for you. It'll suggest a lane change. It also keeps you centered in the lane, and Chevy's been expanding the usage of Super Cruise, of course, because they continue to improve the roads that are mapped throughout the country. So I'd argue that if you guys do a lot of road trips, Super Cruise is definitely a reason why you'd want to pick this vehicle. It is among the best driver assistance tech that you're going to find. The one thing I did notice about this car in my weeks of testing, however, is when you are accelerating in this vehicle, I'm noticing a slight shudder that's coming through in the steering wheel. I'm not entirely sure why the shudder is there. It almost feels like a vibration is coming through from the engine, but it only happens between 3 to 4,500 RPM when I'm accelerating. So I'm feeling that vibration again. It's coming through the pedals, and it also, you can feel it in the seats. I'm not entirely sure if it's a pre-production glitch of my car, but it also has these all-terrain tires, which could be adding to that, you know, shuddering that I'm feeling. But that could just be isolated incident to my specific vehicle. But overall, this is definitely a pleasant driving vehicle still. You just have to, again, get used to the big size. Now, in terms of fuel efficiency, Chevy obviously went to a 4-cylinder because they wanted to improve the power and the fuel efficiency. Oh, by the way, there are some different drive modes. I'll switch it back into normal mode here, see if that helps. Still feeling that shudder, which is weird. Back to fuel economy. In my week's worth of testing, I averaged around 19 mpg, which is bang on with the EPA's numbers. On the highway, I was able to get it up to about 23 mpg, which is pretty good. It's just shy of the EPA's 24 mpg mark. You have a 21.5 gallon fuel tank. It's about 2 gallons bigger versus the front-wheel drive version of this car. The trip computer was showing around 500 miles of range on full tank, which is excellent. In my weeks of the testing, I averaged around 450 miles of range. So still very good. Even though this is not a hybrid, it actually does pretty well in terms of range, in terms of efficiency, but it could do even better if Chevy would just offer a hybrid. There are talks that GM is restarting the hybrid powertrain program internally, so don't be surprised to see the company come out with an electrified version of this car at some point. It doesn't need to be all electric, just give us a hybrid. I think a hybrid would do extremely well. But overall, the new Traverse is certainly a big improvement over the previous generation. Is it worth a look over its competitors? If you need the most space, absolutely. But if you want something that's a little bit sportier or something that offers a little bit more in terms of fuel efficiency with its hybrid powertrains that you can get in the competitors, that's where you might want to check out the competition. Or you can also happen to check out within GM's own competition, which would be the Acadia, which I should be driving hopefully later this summer, and of course the Enclave, which I'll be driving in early September as well. But really, there are no shortages of three-row family SUVs, but this right here is definitely one of the biggest and one of the most spacious. So with just over 123,000 units sold in the US last year, the Chevrolet Traverse is a very important model for Chevy, and this is still one of the top-selling vehicles in the three-row crossover family SUV segment, outselling vehicles like the Hyundai Palisade, Kia Telluride, Honda Pilot, Nissan Pathfinder, just to name a few. So after spending a few days with the all-new third-generation Traverse, I've been waiting to finally get my hands on this vehicle, and I have to say, Chevy has really done a great job with this redesign. I love the brand new exterior styling. It finally has a more masculine appearance, which should help attract more male buyers into showrooms, because currently the Traverse demographic accounts for about 70% females, and I think Chevy will definitely still attract those females, but also bring in some male buyers into the segment. The new turbocharged four-cylinder delivers adequate acceleration. It's not class-leading, but it does have class-leading standard power. Fuel economy is also pretty good. Acceleration, you guys saw 0 to 60 in 7.4 seconds, pretty much matches the time of a base four-cylinder turbo Grand Highlander. And I definitely think this car has still top of the class interior space. The technology is also great. That 17.7-inch display, which is standard, is definitely the biggest in the segment. I love the fact that it has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. GM really just needs to add that feature to their Blazer EV and all their upcoming EVs, which are supposedly getting rid of the wireless phone integration. The second row is spacious. The third row, I will say, should be more spacious considering the size of this vehicle, but I think Chevy did that on purpose because they wanted to give it best-in-class cargo space behind the third row, which it certainly does. So as long as you move the second row seat forward, you will have pretty comparable amounts of interior space compared to a lot of its main rivals. My gripes with this car are few. I mean, I do wish that Chevy offered a hybrid option. I'm hoping that they will be working on that in the coming years. I also don't love the shudder that I'm feeling with this particular model as I'm accelerating between 3,000 to 4,000, 5,000 RPM. I feel a noticeable shudder in the seats and in the steering wheel. Not sure if that has to do with the fact that mine is just kind of an anomaly, but let me know in the comment section below if you guys own this car and you notice that same thing. I do think that the pricing of this car has also gotten a little expensive, and I do wish that Chevy would offer a higher trim above the RS with lighter interior color options. I think that's really a perplexing move for them. I think it could be a deal breaker for some of you who don't like a black interior because it was only offered on the top trims. If you want a light color interior, you have to step down to the LT, where they basically just offer a two-tone black and gray interior. So you might want to also check out the Acadia, its sister vehicle, for more interior color options. Now, if you're looking to put a new Traverse in your driveway, these vehicles are already on dealer lots. And the base pricing for the LS with front-wheel drive is going to start at just under $39,000. That represents about a $4,000 price increase versus the previous generation, which is kind of worth it considering all the additional technology and features and the turbocharged engine that you get with this new generation. So I think it's kind of worth it. Add $2,000 if you guys want all-wheel drive. The Z71 trim starts at around $47,800. Which is included with all-wheel drive. It's around $4,400 more versus an LT with all-wheel drive, and you certainly get some upgrades, especially if you guys plan to do some more overlanding. You need to do some off-roading to go to your favorite campsite, for example. The Z71 package will certainly do that for you. Now, my tests are with the Super Cruise package. which includes a bunch of other technology features. The panoramic sunroof and destination comes in at just over $54,000. 54 grand puts it right along the same, pricing category as a lot of its competitors, but the Z71 is missing a couple of features like the heated and cooled seats, the heated back rows, of course, a lighter interior color option. So I would probably step it up to the RS, but of course you're gonna have the 22-inch wheels and less off-road capability. The RS is only around $3,000 more for a lot more equipment. Keep in mind the GMC version of this car, which I should be getting to test very soon, is roughly around $5,000 more expensive versus this car, although the GMC does offer it with a couple of other features and color options that you simply can't get with the Traverse. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2024 Chevrolet Traverse Z71. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.